So hello, everyone. Scott Sommer here, holistic healer and practitioner. So I'm really excited today because today we have a wonderful guest who's a great friend of mine, and he's a holistic clinical nutritionist. And so this is a great honor. And he comes from a very long family line of nutritionists and doctors and helping many, many people. And he's based out of Texas. And so at this time, I'd like to invite Dustin on the show and just talk a little bit about his passion and how he got to this point in his life. So Dustin.
Hi. How are you?
Great. Fantastic. Hey, thanks for being on the show. I know this is taking time out of your time, but I know this is your passion really is helping people understand their bodies and how to get healthy. And so this is about life-changing tips, as to how to help our, listeners and how to make a difference in their lives. So we're glad that you're here.
I'm all about that. Any opportunity I can to share some of the secrets we've come across, it's a joyful obligation to do this whenever you can, and I'm happy to do it. And especially with you, Scott, out of so many people that I've wound up working with clinically, you have the respect of your peers. There's so many great things that I've heard and the wonderful ways that you have changed your community and the people that come to you. So I wouldn't miss an opportunity to speak with you.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. Appreciate that. So how'd you get here? I mean, what can you tell us a little bit about your history and your family and where it all began?
Well, yeah, like you said, I did grow up in a family like this. We actually grew up in Wisconsin, a heavy farming community, and grew up on our own farm and actually growing our own food and fortunate to have an early respect and understanding of the connection we have with nature and how nature really nourishes us and sustains us, and seeing what keeps the plants living and what keeps through them, what keeps us living, and how that actually contributes to overall health. Both of my parents were very much respecters of natural health and wanting to learn more and understanding that. And I was mentioning a little bit before we got started here how growing up, it was such a passion of my father that we spent, I think, easily over 10,000 hours in continuing education by the time I even graduated from high school, because every weekend, his idea of bonding was, we're going to go listen to this guy speak, or we're going to learn from this person. We're going to talk about this book. So I had an excellent, and very fortunate early connection to holistic healing.
Wow. So a bunch of field trips.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, that's quite amazing. Yeah, that's we have that in common for sure, because I think I told you before that I grew up on a farm and my dad had 5 acres, and we weren't as dependent upon as it sounds like you were to grow food. It was more of a hobby for my dad, but nonetheless, it was about, respecting the soil. Mm-hmm. And he used to always say the secret's in the soil,
Yes.
So I totally get it.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, and it took longer and longer for me to really get that. And as you know, as we start to learn and more, the foundations of that early education just get deeper and deeper, because you really start to appreciate and understand what that really meant, that the foundations are in the soil, especially now.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that totally. I remember, as a kid growing up with health food and brown rice when everyone else is eating Cocoa Puffs, Yeah. And it's like you didn't quite appreciate it then. You're like, man, we are such a strange family, in comparison to the rest of the world. And now I appreciate it, of course, more than ever. So absolutely.
I may have one up on you. We used to drink chlorophyll for breakfast. That was one of the things that my dad got turned on to. And a great point to actually understand that at the time, we thought it was the healthy thing to do because it was water extracted or water soluble. But now we've come to learn that's not how you want it. You want it the way nature occurs. So even then, when we were still weird, we still had things to learn, which was great.
Yeah, no, I think you got me beat on that one. I did do some desiccated liver, but not chlorophyll. So how long have you been in the field, and how long have you been doing this, would you say?
So yeah, informally, like I said, it's been since childhood, obviously. And then actually when I went to my undergrad at University of Wisconsin, I was attending nutrition classes, and I'd sit at the front and I'd want to get into the debates. And so I'm always been a massive student of this. But clinically now, I was just thinking about that. I've logged well over 20,000 hours clinically. And I say it like that, Scott, because I know for someone to say, oh, well, Scott's been doing this for so many years, But what they don't realize is how many hours you're actually putting into those years. Because I know that you're there super early in the morning, and I know that you're staying there super late at night, and you're putting in way more hours than what someone would normally think that you're putting into a year. So yeah, it's been a lifelong a lifelong commitment to learning this and practicing it and learning more.
That's so true. The key to what you just said was a lifelong commitment. And, I just had this conversation with a good friend and a patient, and actually literally last night, and she was just like, wow, there's just so much to know. And I said, you have no idea. I told her, I said, this is all I do besides spend time with my family and go on bike rides, Mm-hmm. And it's just, and you're still so much to learn. So
and you almost feel like you can't even apply all that you've learned yet, because you've got to develop ways to even integrate into your own life, because there's so much to learn. That's what I find.
Absolutely. And that's the joy of this whole field, for sure. Helping people and learning, for sure. Right. So what have you learned along the journey? So what would you could say to our listeners about, what you've learned, and it's really life-changing for you on this journey?
Oh man, so many different things. But if I were to choose one thing right off the top of my head, it would be how vastly underutilized nutrition really is in people's lives. The fact that we start to learn more and more and more about it, but the appreciation for the true power of healing that comes from nutrition really takes unlearning almost the way that people have been taught about health, as if we are a victim to certain things that are happening in the world, as opposed to learning and empowering ourselves with what can continually heal us. And more than anything else, I think it is just that idea that there's always something you can do to improve upon your health. And too often people have gone down different paths and found, like they feel like they've run into a dead end. And they think that's it. They think they've hit all their options and they've exhausted what there is, but there is always so much more that you can do. And seeking out people like yourself, you could introduce them to probably 100 things that they hadn't even thought about. And so there's always something they got to choose that they're going to be able to do to get healthier. I think that is something I've learned, and I continue to learn as I try to learn from all the practitioners that I'm now working with as a consultant and trying to extract from them, that there is so much more to learn. And there's so much when you work as a community, when you work with practitioners like yourself who want to share with others, you start standing on shoulders of giants who are standing on the shoulders of giants. And there's so much more you can see and do. And the limits, the potential is unlimited. It really is.
Yeah, that really is a good summary. Really well put, and I think it's true. I remember this call one time based on what you just said. Is somebody, the common call that people do is, they want to become a new patient, but they're not sure if it's going to help them. And then they talk to my wife at the front desk and they say, do you think nutrition will really make a difference? And I said, nutrition will always make a difference. It will always change the body. In fact, statistics, recently, I just read a stat in a book recently, just coming here, and it was like 92% of Americans have some kind of nutritional deficiency, 92%. So it's like almost 100%. I mean, so we know that it's probably even higher than that.
The limits are probably in the research on that, honestly, because when I measure what a deficiency would be, it's not just something to get you into a chronic ill state or a state of disease. I think that there are upper limits that people are missing out to bring them to new levels of health and vibrance and really vitality and really enjoying life. So
absolutely. I like what you just said, because that really goes into the book that I'm writing on the abundant life, because I feel like we're just barely alive. Most people are just barely alive when they really could be thriving. And it's a whole different level of wellness for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what motivates you? What's your motivation every morning, getting up in the morning and getting out of bed? I mean, what's your motivation?
I would say that is my motivation, to know that there are so many people, as you said, who are just surviving. They're just getting through the day. And there's so much to life. There's so much joy and love and just vibrance to experience. And when I see people who are not getting that, it breaks my heart, and it makes me want to do everything I can to share with them something that they can do. And I think it's the success stories more than anything else. One of my favorite things to do is, when I talk to the practitioners that I'm consulting for, is sharing with them the recent successes that I've had, And that usually sparks in them another story that they can bring back and tell. And it's bringing people from a position of not feeling empowered or uninformed or misinformed to a position where now they're empowered and they can transform their own lives. That to me is absolute motivation enough to get up and work almost as long as you do every day.
Right.
What we do.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I've always enjoyed that about you and appreciated our friendship and your dedication, because I see that in you. You really care about people, and as we do as well. So what do you think is the biggest misconception about supplements and nutrition in general, but kind of more specifically, maybe supplements?
Well, I would first say that the belief that all supplements are the same, right? Or that they're all made the same, that they're all from the same sourcing. And people think of supplements as almost a drug, right? They think of it as something that is trying to get them out of an acute situation, or they're told that they have to take this for a short period of time. And when you really think about the actual word, it's supplementing a diet. It's filling in the gaps in a diet. And you can only do that with foods. And most people think of these because they have been equated with chemicals, and they've been equated with this one being associated with a certain percentage of this chemical that should be represented. And the greatest problem is that the vast majority of what's available to people out there is truly just a chemical approximation. It's a fractionated piece of food, and you really want the whole foods. And I think that's the thing that I want people to learn, is that there are supplements out there that are truly whole food dietary supplements. And I know that practitioners like yourself and myself are attempting to actually supplement people's diets with food, actual food, finding ways in there. And if we can't do that, then we need to find a supplement that is going to be able to satisfy that is a food, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that philosophy. And my dad had that philosophy on the farm as well, and there's such a difference, and I tell our patients, would you say that all cars are the same? And they say, no, there's a difference in quality, right? I mean, the Yugo was the worst car that was ever made versus a Ferrari, and I'm saying, well, do you want to feel like a Yugo or a Ferrari? When they bring in these supplements that are not whole food, they're synthetic, and, it's just not going to work. I said,
right.
You put this is not fuel for your body. Your body will reject this like a drug.
Right.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Good answer. That's great. So what should we look for when buying supplements? How can you tell? Because that's a big question that a lot of our patients have, how can I tell if I'm taking a whole food supplement?
Right. I think you look for sourcing. And I think a good rule of thumb is I always ask, what is nature going to say about this? And a lot of things are going to be following the latest trend or the greatest, the new thing that's being hyped and marketed more than anything else. And it's always a caution to kind of look past the marketing and look past what this latest trend or craze is, and look, has this company been around? Have they been time tested? Have they been saying the same message, or have they changed it depending on what's fashionable and what's getting people excited right now? And so those are the two things that I really try to look for. And the question I always use as my litmus test is, what does nature have to say about this? Is this something that you could find in nature? Or is it something that is outside of nature? Because I remind everybody, we are part of nature. We're not outside of it. So we shouldn't be looking things outside of nature to be able to be a part of it and to be healing from it. So I would say sourcing, make sure the sourcing is from a good, trusted, quality source, and where it is, and that it's been around. And having, somebody who has a historic experience with this and can tell you about something that's been time tested and has really kind of got that truth to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if I can add to that, so that's a great response is, like if you need a dictionary to try to understand the label of something,
Yep.
It's probably not from nature, Right. If it says organic beets, yeah, that's good, and it's a totally different story than if something is fractionated like ascorbic acid or,
right.
It's just not going to be found in nature. And I use the example of an orange, and a fractionated, example that you just said is, something that's synthetic, not from nature, would be like just throwing somebody in, they ask for an orange and you throw them an orange peel. And it's just a piece of the orange, but it's not an orange, right, versus giving them the whole orange. And that's the difference between a whole food and supplement and something that's synthetic,
Right.
reductionated. And we've just really gotten to where we've just reduced everything to a synthetic source. Everything is just so man-made that we can't expect the body to respond in a natural way to something synthetic. Absolutely. So let's see. So why is the heart? Let's dive into the heart, because I know that's one of your specialties of many. And that, in your clinic in Texas, and as you work with all these practitioners, which is just really admirable, to be able to run your own practice, helping so many patients. And then I know people flying from all over to see you. And then on top of that, you're helping other practitioners, which we appreciate, assisting us in our practice as well. And, but yet, I know that the heart is one of your, specialties as well. And kind of, maybe you can explain even back to your dad and maybe how that all started.
Absolutely. What I've come to respect is the importance of paying attention to how the heart is working. I think I actually kind of thought about that when I was with you last time in Chinese medicine. What do? They take your pulse. They take information from that. The Ojibwa nation, the tribal medicine men would call it your dead way, the beat of your heart. So they're getting information that the strength of the heart is. And one saying that I always resonates in my brain is that the heart eats first. The heart is going to take that nutrients for itself first. And if you don't have enough to satisfy that heart, you definitely don't have enough to satisfy all the other needs in the body. So there is the heart sound recorder that, or the endocardiograph that Dr. Lee brought was a very eye-opening to me to help really understand what is going to bring us, like I said, to that optimum level of health. What is missing to make sure that everything is humming in the way that it's supposed to be? And I mean, quite honestly, the heart is the number one threat to humanity. I mean, it's the number one killer by far. And the fact that we can start to learn why it is and empower and strengthen that heart and make such a major impact on our entire society. I'm going to speak passionately about that because we've been doing all kinds of things for the last 50 years to try to slow these numbers down of cardiac deaths, and they haven't been changing. They've been, in the opposite direction at best. So really taking these opportunities to learn what the difference is and where we can improve upon that, and learning things about your omega-3 saturation in your heart and how that can be a massive difference between life and death, quite honestly, for somebody, and not just for the heart, but for everything else. So as the heart goes, I would imagine the rest of the body is going to follow. And when, it's funny, you ask somebody if they've had heart disease, or they'll come to you and say, I'm concerned, I have heart disease in my family. And I always tell them, you're American. Of course you have heart disease in your family. Everybody has had somebody that has heart disease, or one way or the other. And it's not because it's been in your family. It's because you're in this community that we are doing these things that are creating these stresses to our heart. And as soon as we can identify what we're doing and make sure that we're doing what's going to support the heart health, it can change everything. And, there's an emotional component to it too. There's a lot of strengthening the heart that gives people courage, and it gives them just this feeling that you and I are trying to bring people to, of having courage and enjoyment in life, and this joy and freedom to just really live. So yeah, there's a lot that I'm passionate about when it comes to the heart, and I've come to become much more respectful of it because of that historic. And I think you were asking about historically within my dad's practice. He had a heart sound recorder for a long time too. And he was so enamored with seeing exactly how nutrition impacts the heart in such a short period of time. You can see that. And in my own practice, I've been, eating this and listening to my heart and eating other things. And it's fascinating to see how quickly your heart will respond to whether you're giving it good nourishment or if you're giving it something that's challenging to your body. So it's a great way to highlight it and really help you understand what's really good and what's just, maybe advertising.
Yeah, that's really important. Biofeedback is what I call that, and the ability to, find out immediately how your body's responding to something. And so I appreciate that, information, because it's so true, that when we can really see immediately how the body's responding, whether or not you take your blood pressure and then you do something, eat something, and you take your blood pressure afterwards. Like the same thing can happen like food allergies. I've noticed over the years that when people have food allergies, their heart rate starts to increase, related to the heart. And you're right, the heart is, immediately affected. And as an athlete myself, my wife and I, ride our bikes a lot. We're cyclists. And, I just, I take my supplements for sure before we, every day, of course, but especially when we do some kind of an event, like go on a bike ride. Like we just did a 24-mile bike ride, and I feel like there's just no way that we didn't feel sore. I mean, we woke up this morning, I'm like, hey, how do you feel? Like, great. It's like, and that wasn't true in the years past when I didn't have the support of nutrition. And so the body just really can be so fully supported, and the heart as well. I mean, when you're cycling, exercising, you're using your heart all the time. And one of my greatest stories of a 90-year-old that I saw that had open heart, he was going to get open heart surgery, and he called me on a Wednesday. This is kind of an amazing story. And so he called me from the gurney, and he said on a Wednesday, I never forgot it, Wednesday afternoon, he said, I'm on a gurney and about ready to be wheeled in for surgery. Should I do it? And I said, if it were me and I was talking to myself, my grandfather or my dad, I would say I would get off the gurney. I mean, you probably wouldn't survive the surgery. But you have to decide. I can't tell you what to do. You have to make it your own decision. But the information that I'm giving you is basically, I don't think you would survive the surgery. And let's figure out what's really causing this, And so he got off the gurney, and his wife was really strong with a cane. She waved her cane at the surgeon and nurses and said, yeah, we're not doing this. We're going to go home, and we're going to look at another option. And within a month, I had his heart working again at a higher level, and he lived well into his late 90s. Wow. And I found a virus on his heart, and we corrected it nutritionally and herbally and acupuncture, and he lived a longer and stronger life without open heart surgery. So, wow. I mean, but we don't think of that as even being possible. And you mentioned that earlier, which I really like, is having, more courage and more understanding of what's possible, another viewpoint, and there are so many possibilities. The body is supernatural and can really heal. That's really true.
What a powerful story, but also that there's not a limit on when you can heal, right? After 90, people would think, well, everything's done. I'm just waiting at the time, and you can still improve upon your health. You can still heal and nourish and bring your body life. That's what people need to learn, I think.
That is really true. That's a great tip. And I always say it's never too late until it's too late. And that's yeah, really. And you never know what you don't know until you know it. And so those summaries, I think, are just the key. So in closing, what would you say, like, what are some really great health tips that you can give our listeners about just nutrition, their diet, just key elements of maybe 1 or 2, 3 things that they can change right away that would really make an impact on their heart maybe, or their life, or what do you think?
Wow. I think if I were to choose one thing that would be a life changer, it's if you are struggling with condition, is to seek out people who have had success with that. Because we do need to first know that it's possible and be strong in that belief, because you're going to find things that are going to help you get stronger. From a nutrition standpoint, the easiest way to give an answer to that is to eat real whole foods. And I know that sounds very simple and basic, but you definitely want to get a good variety of these whole foods as best as you can as well. Oftentimes people kind of fall into a food rut, and they're eating and they're getting their macros, they're getting, some protein, and they're getting a lot of carbs and a little bit of fat, but it's the micronutrients that we really are finding are going to be a game changer for people. So making sure you are getting a good variety, so you're getting all kinds of different micronutrients, because we still haven't discovered how much or how many, or which, maybe probably even all the micronutrients and what they do for us. So the way that we're going to get that is perfectly packaged. The vegetables are going to extract it out of the soil for us, so it makes it easy. So making sure you're doing that. And then third, I would say to not be so concerned of always eating so much food. I do think that we actually eat a little more than we need to in the foods that don't have nutrients in them. And when you are eating nutrient dense food, like whole foods and vegetables, you don't necessarily need to keep eating all the time to satisfy a carbohydrate or a calorie need. but focus on what nutrients you're getting versus calories. And that's been something I think that really has tripped people up. So, well, I need to eat so many calories in this day to be able to do this or to do that, but they're completely missing on this treasure trove of micronutrients that are actually making all of the chemical reactions happen in your body on a daily basis. So I'd say focus more on micronutrient dense foods, get those nutrients, and don't be so worried about the caloric intake. Obviously, you don't want to take in too many calories, but I'd be more focused on the nutrients.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Those are great tips, Dustin. Thank you very much for that. I would say that, micronutrients, like you mentioned, are like spark plugs. They seem so small to a car. You could have this huge engine like a Ferrari, but if you take out the spark plugs, you're going nowhere. You just have no power.
It's mind blowing to realize how much of them we are using in every second. There's a lot of talk. We talk about these fads and things about methylation and how people can't methylate very well. But when you think about what that is, it's a process that happens in every cell in your body every second, 1 million times. And every time that happens, you need 3 magnesium molecules and you need 3 zinc molecules. So to actually understand how much we need these micronutrients is so far beyond our ability to even comprehend. So, let's default to make sure we're just getting as much as we can in there on a daily basis to keep it all running, because you don't know what's not running.
Exactly. That's true. Yeah, exactly. And it just goes along with what our philosophy is: just eat the rainbow.
Right.
Basically eat the salad with lots of greens as number one. And so those are some great tips. Well, I really had some fun today with you and really enjoy our conversation. And I really look forward to having you back. So what I was thinking is we'll have you back and maybe talk a little bit more about the heart rate recorder another time. And of course, we'll be having you in the clinic.
Yes.
As well. So there's going to be lots of great talks and lots of great opportunities.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to it. And I love to hear these success stories. So please keep those coming.
Absolutely.
Those keep me inspired. And so we can continue to share, what we're learning with people who are actually going to apply it to their lives and feel alive.
Absolutely. To the abundant life and beyond.
Yes,
all right. Definitely. Well, thanks, Dustin. And
thank you.
We'll talk soon. Thanks again for being a guest.
Thank you.
Bye now.